Hello, this is Hilary Robertson and you're listening to Harmonious World. This week I'm joined by Elyse Anne Kakacek, who is an outstanding award-winning soprano singer, and she's joined with organist and pianist Dr. Ryan Jackson for a recording of Czech composer Dvorak's biblical songs in English. And we'll find out during our conversation why that is so interesting. Formless is out now. You can get it electronically so that you can listen to it while we're all in lockdown. So I hope you enjoy our conversation.
Hello there. Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. It's a nice fall day here in Brooklyn, so it's kind of
Oh,
windy and cold and the leaves are starting to turn, so it's a nice day.
thank you for joining me on Harmonious World.
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm fascinated because actually you're not officially on Twitter. I can't find you on Twitter, but I found a couple of snippets of you singing with, I think, your partner, Nate.
Yes,
So
yes.
I listened to Amazing Grace and My Favorite Things. They're beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. Actually, that's so funny. I actually don't have a Twitter account. It's the one social media account that I do not have. But yes, on Instagram, and I think we put some of them up on Facebook as well. When we were stuck in March, we just started making these videos here and there because he's also a musician and we miss so much making music in person. And so we thought, well, why not do it together? We have a luxury of living with another musician. And it was also really fun to kind of play outside of the classical sandbox and just do what we wanted to do instead of only be within the realm of what we normally get hired for. So
Yes, and they're beautiful. They're really lovely. So I'm going to check out the others on the other. I only got as far as Twitter. I don't know why.
that's
I
so
This is my default social media for some reason. I kind of start with Twitter and then I
no.
go on. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that it's like really helpful also for, or helpful. I don't know if helpful is the right word, but I've heard that it's also very useful in like the news these days, which is I've considered getting a Twitter account just to be more informed from firsthand sources about things. Because I'm sure you've heard in the States, we have a really big issue with fake news. So I
Absolutely.
haven't done it yet.
It is actually worth it. One of the things that I connected to very early in the pandemic was the World Health Organization Twitter account,
Yes.
because they've got a lot of the pure, almost grassroots information.
Yes, the unpolitical information that actually keeps people safe. It's actually
Yeah.
interesting you say that. The pandemic hit when I was in Italy. I was in Milan when the pandemic hit Milan.
Oh,
And
oh no.
yeah, and it was very interesting to experience being in Europe for the start and then in the United States. I came back to the States just before the borders were closed. I just made it before, and I wouldn't have mind being stuck in Europe, to be quite honest. But it was really interesting, the different types of information that were going on in Italian press versus American press. And the World Health Organization was always the one that was really, really reliable. And that was where I was putting all of my energy for about 24 hours when I was deciding to leave early.
Yes.
Just
Well,
constantly
wisely.
refreshing that Health Organization page. So
Yeah.
I can relate.
Yeah. I'm really talking to you today about the Dvorak biblical songs.
Yeah.
Aren't they a joy?
Oh, they're so beautiful. I am so grateful that they came into my life and my vision. And for that, I have Ryan Jackson to thank. He was the accompanist on the album. I had never heard of these songs, but my family, I have a Czech heritage. With my last name is Kakacek or Kakacek, and I've
How
always.
do you pronounce it actually?
Sure. So there are actually two pronunciations. The American version is Kakacek, but in the Czech Republic, it would be Kakacek.
Right. I thought it was Kakacek because,
Yes.
yes, but that's, I think we're that little bit closer, aren't we? You know, the Czech Republic is not that far away from us compared to,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. I respond to both. So
Okay.
I'm rather indifferent as far as that goes. But I have always
Yes.
felt very drawn to my bohemian roots and drawn to Dvorak's music in particular. Even when I was younger, the New World Symphony was the first experience I had, I think, as most people, with his music. But I had no idea that he wrote these songs. And it was a couple of years ago, I was singing a solo service at the Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church in Manhattan, right there on Fifth Avenue and 55th Street. And Ryan had me sing 3 of these for a church service. And I just fell utterly in love with them. And Ryan and I had so much fun and found a lot of beauty in making the music together. And we had this crazy idea to just record all of them, because when I was looking them up online to study them and to hear reference recordings, I couldn't find very much. There were only recordings in the Czech with the orchestrated version, or I think that there's one English version, but it's sung by a man. And that has its value for certain. But I think particularly now with everything the world is facing, and all of the loss that all of us have had to endure, whether it's the loss of loved ones or the loss of dreams or the loss of finances, that I think that there's a place in the world right now for a female voice to offer meditations on hope and on that loss and on facing it head on, with all of our vulnerability, instead of necessarily shying away, because I think we're learning in 2020 there's nowhere to hide for anyone anymore.
Yes, and isn't that interesting? Because I think that is what Dvorak is saying in his translations of these very, very, very old texts. It's all about actually facing loss and looking at it head on, rather than being anxious and trying to push it away.
Right. Yeah, I was really drawn to that as well. And I think that brings me to a very special thing about these songs is that Dvorak decided to translate the Czech. He wrote them
Yeah.
originally in Czech with an orchestrated version, and then he decided to translate them into English. And the reason for that is because he was living in New York at the time that they were composed. And it's rumored, but people are pretty positive that he wrote these in response to his father passing while he was living in New York. So he was not able to have his adequate amount of closure or attend the funeral or be with his family while they were going through that hard time, which, if you've ever been in a country that's not your own, or where you aren't speaking the same language as others, it's already its own type of isolating experience. But then to face that grief of losing a parent in that isolation, I think was difficult for him. This is just my sense from having studied these. I believe that this was his way to develop community and to connect with his new American friends and audience in the most vulnerable way that he possibly could, and in a rather radical way. Also, considering the religious nature of these texts, he could have very easily picked up a King James Bible or any Englishly translated Bible that has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years as well. But he really cared about sharing and imparting his culture and his roots with his new American friends in a true connection of respect and admiration from both sides, which I find just so profound. And Dvorak was a very profound person for his time as well. So these songs are just such a beautiful, to say snapshot is almost diminutive. So I don't necessarily mean snapshot, but when you look at them, they're short, they're small, there are 10 of them, the whole album is 30 minutes, but they pack so much into that tiny space that connects everyone, with the music across space and time, to those we've lost that we love, across cultures, across, language barrier, even if you listen to the way that the music works, even if you didn't know the words. I do believe that they would have a similar sentiment with the word. But they're so special, and I'm so grateful that I have been able to put them out into the world in this way, and that more people will hopefully sing them and get to know them and have them change their lives the way they've changed mine.
Yes, and especially at this moment in time.
Yes.
It's
It's so funny. It's like a divine, divine timing is the thing that keeps coming up for me, because we recorded these in person together in January 2019. And it just didn't feel right to release them yet. And no one was stressed out about it. Ryan wasn't stressed out about it. I wasn't. The producer wasn't stressed out about it. We were just kind of like, these are beautiful, and we're going to do some other things. And then when I came back to the States in March, and things in Brooklyn got really dark with the pandemic, New York got hit very hard almost immediately when I got back. And I'm only about 5 blocks away from my nearest hospital. So just the sirens and the mortality of it all was very present. And facing that, it just really dawned on me, and I contacted Ryan. And I said, I think the time is right, and I think that the world needs these right now, and none of us can offer any healing in any way that we normally do, where I would be ready to put on a concert of these songs and sing them into a crowd to hopefully ease some suffering and offer some catharsis. But I can't. My hands are tied. So it was almost perfect that we had this other way to hopefully offer that.
Yes, and I think there is a simplicity about the music as well as a complexity. It's a very strange. It's very Dvorak, isn't it? It's very. There's also something very Eastern European, but also very American about it. It's a beautiful sort of moment in time from 120 whatever years ago, and today.
Yes, it's so interesting, isn't it, too, that they just connect so perfectly. And then also that simplicity and complexity together, when you think about losing someone and what that does for you when that happens, especially a family member who's been with you your whole life, when you lose someone like that, and you have the simplicity of recognizing their importance to you, and the simplicity of your understanding of the love that was there, and the simplicity of this was my so-and-so and they are no longer here. And then the complexity of still feeling them in your vision and still remembering them so fondly, and sometimes not fondly. It can be very complex to lose someone you're close to, because relationships are not always rainbows. And so to have to have that sadness at the loss, but also a recognition of the complexity, is the nature of what he was experiencing. And then he put that so potently into each of these songs, and it just, even the joyful ones, it's really amazing. And I think the last one that is the most, it's almost hunky-dory in a way. The last one is almost like
yes, it is
a little jig kind of a thing. It's like all pentatonic. So there's that layer to it, even though it seems like a childlike simplicity. There's this maturity under the surface that's really beautiful in these.
Yes, there's the pentatonic nature of number 10, and sing ye a joyful song. And actually, for anybody who has a faith, there is a sense that you try to do that through everything, that's not at all to negate the negative feelings or the difficulties that we all go through, but to kind of finish by expressing a joy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, making joyful sound. Yeah.
Yes. Some of my audience won't be musical. They won't understand what a pentatonic scale is. It doesn't matter in a way, but because it's just it is a good song. And one of the things I like about the others, well, all of them actually, is there's lots of sort of key change stuff going on that's very subtle.
Yes, it's amazing. Actually, most of the songs I'm probably going to forget myself, but most of the songs begin in one key and end in a completely different key. But while you're listening, it's done so simply and seamlessly and so in line with the intentionality that you don't even notice. It truly becomes, instead of an intellectual understanding of, oh, something shifted there, you just feel along the song and you're taken to a different place.
I really hate pop songs where they do this sudden key change, and it's just grating and it's just awful. And then you hear things like this where it's very subtle. There's a great version of Mac the Knife, which that goes through hundreds of, it goes through every key in the world.
Yes.
And that is almost throwing key changes in your face. It's like, okay, here we go, we're going up a semitone, we're going up another semitone,
Yes.
And that is exactly the opposite of this, because that's in your face. Right, I'm going to change key now. And they both work really well in a way that pop songs that do it's very clumsy sometimes.
Yes, it can be, for sure.
I think often of 80s and 90s, well, especially British pop songs, it was often almost like, well, we've got a formula, and the formula is, this is what, this is how it's going to work. It's like Motown. Motown always had these big intros, 2 bars of something, and then the singers come in, and then we're off. And it's almost as if, the 80s and early 90s was, right, we're going to stick a key change in now. That has to be done. Where's your key change?
Yes, it is. It did become very formulaic. And I think that probably from a place of like, key changes are moments of arrival and big emotional experiences. So we want to give that, but maybe not quite facilitated in a way that was necessarily effective. And I think that that's really what makes Dvorak's use of that so, it's just masterful, the way that he did that, because it wasn't, and this is true of every element of all 10 of these songs, nothing was gratuitous. Not one single moment of his writing was there to show off or to be like, oh, look at this cool thing that I'm going to do here. Every single moment was directly in line with the heart. And it's
the
so
message of the song.
Yes. Yeah. And it's so interesting because the text of these songs, I had a concern at the first release of them that the religious nature of the text might be ostracizing for some people, because I think that, spirituality is such a loaded thing these days. And it's become very political and very social in many ways, which I understand for people who have been harmed by some systems. But I eventually, it was about a week after the release, I felt so secure and confident actually in that, because of the way the text was employed. It was not employed politically or based on any system. It was connecting that text to the heart and to the actual emotions and experience of these meditations on loss, which we all can relate to. And in that way, it's almost a hearkening back to spiritual text in a new light, possibly for some people who have felt the need to push that away because of miscommunication or bad judgment of an ineffective use of them in the past, let's say.
Yes. I sense we have to be careful about how we talk about faith and religion and texts and that sort of thing. But there's also something, I think, especially, obviously I'm older than you, my generation, we grew up with hearing a lot more, hymns. And, in school, it was always every morning started with assembly and we sang hymns. You didn't necessarily believe what you were singing or even understand what you were singing, but you sang hymns. So you were familiar with that language.
Yes.
And there's something about going back to that. I think a lot of people still go back to those religious hymns at times of difficulty.
Most definitely. And I actually think it's very important. I personally, I'm an incredibly spiritual person, and I was raised in the United Church of Christ, and I'm a person of faith. But I went through my own period of wanting to really take a hard left from the things that I was told I had to do when I was younger. And I'm a yoga teacher now, and I'm also
Oh,
like a spiritual mentor for a few different people that I'm very close with. And I'm finding more and more that when I do speak to especially young people, I have a vocal studio also of many teenagers and also adults, and working especially with teenage girls and expressing to them my understanding of faith and in a more accessible way. I've noticed that it's actually, I think, something that everyone is experiencing. We just don't have the words to standardize it or to put it within certain boxes, and especially young people feel this pressure to not assign it to something that is a pre-existing religion. But the common thread in all of it is that heart and that feeling of being connected to other things. And we're seeing it. We're literally, I think this is the biggest silver lining of coronavirus. We have had to actually put to the test, are we connected beyond our physical body? We are testing that in real life for almost 7 months now.
yes.
And we've learned through this experience that we can feel emotionally involved with someone hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away, and we can still share important experiences and loss and grief and happiness and joy. I was on a Zoom wedding at some point with a friend in April. Like, there's so much that is beyond these vessels that carry us through. And that is the thing that we all have in common, regardless of what we feel comfortable speaking to or saying that we are in a religious and spiritual context. And I feel like
Yes.
songs do that also. It's the same thing.
Yes. And I think music, so much music has come from faith. You know, whatever faith it is, there's a lot of, from wherever in the world, it's come out of either formalized religion or just giving thanks. And even
Yeah.
giving thanks is a faith. You know, you have faith, you're giving thanks to something, even if it's nature or whether it's God or whoever it is, whatever it is.
Absolutely. And so important, that gratitude. I mean, I feel like that's like the new currency right now. The more gratitude you can have, the less the suffering needs to be.
Yes, and I think we're about sharing experiences, aren't we, much more now?
Yeah.
And I think the politicians who are still trying to be divisive,
Mm.
wherever you are in the world, we've got them. We've all got them. They're almost speaking sort of against the zeitgeist, because
Yes.
I think as people, we're realizing, look at us, we're connecting between just outside London and in New York,
Yeah.
and we're talking about things, we have a similar experience, and I think that that's what brings us together rather than the things that divide us.
Absolutely. We just had a debate last night in the States, the final
Oh
presidential
yes.
debate. And I mean, it was better than the first one, but that was a very clear thing as I was watching. It's true. There's this us, them, here it's red, blue, conservative, liberal,
Yeah.
all of that, and everything that goes along with that. But the experience of being a person in a community doesn't vibe with that. It does not, those do not go together. And I'm
No.
really curious. It's such as painful as all of this is, and as hard as all of this is, especially as in the performing arts, it's very sad what's going on, and with the continuation of it financially, it might be very difficult for things to ever be as they were. But at the same time, what an exciting time to be alive. We get to, in a way, recreate a new way of thinking. I mean, hopefully. I mean, I
Well,
feel like
yeah.
in numbers, the communities, we all are having these experiences and recognizing that we're not so different. And even if we've never met before, we have these incredible conversations and feel so connected to people that we've probably and possibly never will meet in person, that is above all else and all the squabbles and all of the, it becomes noise, all the noise going on.
Yes. I don't know how aware you are of where Britain is at the moment. We're going through Brexit. So officially, well, we have officially gone through Brexit, and it's just finalising the last details so that on the 1st of January, we are no longer anything to do with Europe. And it's just, we're on our own, out on the other side of 30 miles of water from France. And that's it. But actually that's not how our experience feels for most people in the UK. We don't feel disconnected from Europe. We feel like we're still part of Europe. And you can say that we've gone through Brexit. That's fine. You carry on doing that. We're going to carry on feeling like we're part of Europe.
Yeah, there's the things people say, and then there's the reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's talk about the future. What plans do you have for performing? Do you have any plans for performing? Have you yet got bookings in?
Well, so the difficulty here is that it's very the science is saying it's very unsafe, and that singing particularly is very precarious.
Yes.
So I mean, I've been very lucky to have been hired for a few projects that are virtual. So there are things that will be announced soon. There's an audio recording of a full-length new opera that I recorded in my apartment, which it's amazing how the magic that they worked to make it work out. But it'll be an audio experience with subtitles and stage directions that'll be hosted at a venue in Brooklyn, but all online. All of my live performances have either been canceled or postponed indefinitely. So it's hard to know as far as that goes for the future. However, I actually very recently started a nonprofit organization with a partner of mine that is focused on putting classical music on film in new and interesting ways. We've been collaborating together for a little over 3 years now, but we officially got our nonprofit status and our tax exemption just recently. So
Wow.
we have quite a few projects that we'll be releasing in the coming year, which has been a really welcome way for me to continue creating and connecting with an audience. I am also, this is the first public time I'm talking about this outside of like close friends and family, but I'm also currently writing an original album, and it just started the process of vetting producers and figuring out who I want to work with on that. So that will be coming from me as well. So I've kind of set it up in a way where it's okay if I'm in my room by myself with a microphone for the next year if I need to be. Of course, always still studying my opera and singing. I was singing some Strauss yesterday just for my spirit, and it helped so much. It's hard though, because usually the first 3 minutes I have to cry a lot because I get really sad because I open my windows and I sing for my neighbors, and I just, whatever I can do, because it's who I am, so I miss it. But I'm keeping my chin up and trying to be really innovative and creative and just keep moving and keep doing my best, kind of like this conversation, to connect as much as I possibly can and get to the heart of things. And hopefully when it's time, I'll be as busy as ever again.
Yeah. Fantastic. Tell me what the non-profit is called.
Yes, so we're called Frisson Films. It's Frisson and then Films. Our first project we did, it was I sang an early opera aria by a female composer, Barbara Strozzi, who was alive in the 1500s, and she was considered the best composer of her time in the 1500s, and she was a woman, and everyone hated her for it, slandered her for it. So what we did was we juxtaposed my performance of her aria with video of a pole dancer to kind of take like the feminine power back and kind of examine power dynamics and struggles in relationships, like with a feminism overtone. But Some of the projects that are really exciting that we actually just did a socially distanced filming this past week. We're going to be doing a project with Shostakovich's Violin Concerto in A minor with his cadenza that's centered around the Black Lives Matter movement. So we've hired a bunch of amazing, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, just amazing Black talent to put this together. And we had a dance shoot in the park with an aerialist artist just last Wednesday. So we'll hopefully be releasing that project at our annual festival in January or February. So there's a lot of cool stuff to look out for, but it's been really beautiful to create art in a new way, still with a classical lens, because I think kind of along the lines of what we were talking about before of this being an exciting time to be alive. It's an exciting time to be in the classical music industry as a person who has always felt trapped by the systemic sexism and racism and old white male box that art form has been forced into. I love the art form and it fills my soul to make music, but the logistics of being in this art form has been very controversial, and we're being forced to see all of the things that need healing and to be a part of it at this moment when it's going to have to pivot is so exciting, and I can't wait to see what happens from that. And I kind of feel like it's going to resurge into the mainstream once we get it together.
Yeah, fantastic. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
and actually, I think the other thing is that I think the Black Lives Matter campaign, we've all had a bit more time where we can actually think about how we are behaving and how we are talking and how we are acting. And becoming, I hadn't heard the term anti-racist until during lockdown. And I am actively really trying to be anti-racist on the basis that that's all I can do, really. So I'm going to stand up and be counted. And I find it amazing that this has come at the same time, and it's almost as if we've got the breathing space to go, okay, if we've got to hit the reset button on everything, let's do that and do it right. And that involves racism and sexism and everything else.
Exactly, 100%. And I really do feel that people who are not of color have a responsibility to actively seek to make things as equal as possible, and keeping in mind the hundreds of years of lack of opportunity and it's just horrible. So I'm with you. I got goosebumps when you were talking. So I'm
good.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, well, that's really exciting. Thank you so much for talking to me. I really appreciate your time.
Oh my goodness, it was my complete pleasure. And I love your little friend back there.
Oh, can you see him?
He's adorable.
He's terrible because he sleeps the whole afternoon, and then as soon as I want to record a podcast, he's dropping a ball at my foot and he's chewing his bone and he's going, "Hello, Mom, can I have my tea?"
Yeah, only he gets your attention.
Exactly. No. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And let's do this again, perhaps around the time of that film coming out in January, February time, whenever.
Yes, I would love that, actually. We'll have a whole festival, so maybe I can talk to my partner and all three of us can chat.
That would be amazing. That would be lovely.
We would love it.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, thank you so much. It was really good to talk to you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, you too. Thank you so much for helping me get the word out about these beautiful pieces. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Okay, bye.
Bye.
So it was great to talk to Elyse. And I hope you enjoy the album. If you get a chance to listen to it, all the links will be on the show notes. And please do subscribe to Harmonious World so you get all the episodes immediately when they're released. And I hope you'll join me for the next episode of Harmonious World. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.